Alright, so I know I'm probably making this video like super late. I won't say what time, but it's pretty late at night. But I just wanted to get this out while the details are still very fresh in my mind, so that way I don't forget and like half-ass the next video or book review that I do. Anyways, but this was me diving back into like the Warhammer Crime subsection, I want to say. The BlackLibrary is weird because you've got all these massive stories of like the Chaos Marines, you've got all the Space Marine stories, then you got all the Astra Militarum, then you got the like Inquisition type stories, then you got all those freaking omnibuses that are just full of short stories and practical novels for like focusing on a single faction. But then all through that you've got the small subsection with Warhammer Crime. But I'm pretty excited to talk about this one. The title of this book being Broken City, which took me by surprise as it was a Warhammer Crime anthology, meaning it was like a collection of short stories all packed into one massive book, which, make no mistake, this book is decently sized with about 438 pages, but let's get to just talking about it, shall we? Alright, so Broken City, this entire anthology, apparently takes place within one massive city called Varangantua. And the reason for the title of this is because Varangantua is really just a rotting carcass of a city. That's the best way I could describe it, because the way it is painted all throughout, it's like very heavily industrious. And at the same time, though, it is like rotting on the inside. You got all types of characters packed into this one massive city, which that's one of the main reasons I love the Warhammer Crime series, is because it really brings everything back down to the ground. Because throughout it all, you got all these grandiose space battles and armies clashing against each other, but Warhammer Crime brings it down to ground level among the common citizenry. And you see that nothing has really changed in humanity. They are still fighting multiple wars on multiple fronts against multiple species, but at the same time, down below, humanity's worst enemy is still within itself. You've got the class system going on with the high executives and rich and popular classes, old families and all things like that. And then you get the lowest gutter rats, the people who are just trying to make a living at the worst areas. But I will say this, the amount of stories packed in here really lends a nice flavor because you get it from different people's perspectives. Most of the time I noticed it was like from police officer types. Those are just at least trying to keep the peace within the city, while it's also essentially being dirty cops, in a way. That's the one thing I noticed, is that there's a common theme here of like dirty cops. That's one of the things you notice. It's like they're always collecting money on the side, either by just keeping the peace, getting money sold to them to like keep the peace, keep the gangs under control, things of that nature. But I like how each story was from a different perspective. Like the first book, or the first story, I guess you could say, is essentially from the viewpoint of both a former gang member and a retired Imperial Guard medical officer. And we see their experiences as they're just trying to keep this one person that brings them together alive. And you see like the corruption of the systems with both the enforcers as well as even other medical officers, like former retired military medical officers. You see the corruption just rotting within them, how they are just doing things for like extra money or just trying to get themselves busted, like saving their own hides. But then you get to other stories where it mostly revolves around a lot of different police officers. Hell, I even read one of the short stories in here revolves around a police officer seemingly either A, unlocking psychic abilities, or B, going absolutely bonkers to the fact that he was in the presence of a psyker. Which, as you all know, psychers are essentially like the magicians of this world, but way more messed up, in a way. I mean, think about it. The energy that they're tapping into is just pure, unfiltered chaos. So yeah, it's gonna have some nasty effects, but reading that, I was hooked all the way through with that one story. I won't say the title, I won't say who it's by. You'll have to see for yourself. But just every short story I read had that like subtle flavor to it. Like either it's just trying, but with the overall theme of just survival in a way. Because Verangantua was, as I said before, a rotting carcass, a rotting corpse of a city, where the corrupt are thriving and you just could barely like scrape by just to survive. It really captures that like desperate feeling, and it's one of the reasons why I don't like really large cities, just because they are like massive capitals of something going on there. You've got all the bright and happy buildings, all the bright lights and everything else, but then deep down, like on the streets, or even further below, there's always like that dark underbelly of a city, which is why I like stories revolving around them like hell. One of my favorite series is the Dresden Files, which revolves around essentially investigations within the city of Chicago. And it always explores like the dark underbelly of it. I love stories like that. But it also makes me averted from big cities in like real life. Anyways, all in all though, each story offered a different perspective, and it always kept my attention in a way. Because sometimes with some of these books, I start getting a little bit worn out by the middle of it. But Broken City did manage to keep my attention all the way through, just because it was different. Each scenario was like fast paced, going really fast, quick. Bloodlines took me a while to finish, but this one was just like sped right through. I finished it in like a few days. It's a pretty decent read if you want to take your time with it and like explore different short stories. But that's about all I got. All in all, though, let's go ahead and get to the score, shall we? So, all in all, I would say I would give Broken City a very solid 8 out of 10 for good storytelling, good variety, a lot of good writers in there too. But all in all, it did take me a while to finish, because sometimes it can get a little exhausting, but other than that, if this is able to like grab your attention, then I applaud you. And I hope that this at least perks your interest in the book. If you have any other suggestions for reviews, please let me know in the comment section down below if you've stuck around this long. But anyways, you guys, thank you again for listening. And I hope that if you do decide to pick up this book, that it grabs your attention as much as it did mine. Anyways, you guys, thank you again for listening. This is Rambling Collector, signing off. And every one of you, have an awesome day, and keep up the reading.